Welcome, everyone. I'm Jose Betancourt, and this is an episode of the Anything Podcast. Today I have a very special guest, a friend of mine. He goes by the name of Rich. What's going on, brother?
Hey, man. How's it going?
Doing good, doing good. Rich also owns RageWorksnet.
That's right.
And I have the privilege of contributing material, whether it's video or, well, mainly video or podcasting, not literature, not my forte.
Right.
But when you asked me, Rich, if I wanted to partake and contribute to your website, it was a no-brainer for me. So I appreciate it. So we're going to talk a little bit about RageWorks. But first, I want people to know Rich, because like myself, you're a family man. You have a full-time career. Plus, you love electronics, video games. So therefore, you have your own podcast, you have YouTube, and a website.
That's right.
So I want people to know how someone other than myself, because I'm always talking about myself, how you handle that, because it's not easy.
Yeah, I mean, first off, I'm grateful for the opportunity to come on your podcast and chop it up with you. I know that we've been trying to figure out ways to collaborate and work together in a way that encompasses both our interests, and I'm glad we finally are getting the chance to do that, both from a web presence and online presence standpoint. It's tremendous. I am grateful for that. But I got to say that, the thing that gets me is I came into this with a podcast in 2006. I started doing My Take Radio in 2006, just as a pure podcast. And the only reason I did it was because I used to participate with a podcast called Video Game News Radio. Those guys are actually still cranking. And
awesome.
I'd pop into their podcast, and they like the New York accent. They like that vibe I brought, and they're like, you really should give that some thought. And I'm like, I don't know. And then a listener from their show, a gentleman by the name of Blaine from Canada, he wanted to launch a podcast. Originally, he called it CSS, the Crazy Shit Show.
No.
And he started with that first. He was like, yo, man, I want you to come on board and chop it up with us. So I remember I called him. We did a Skype call, and I think we recorded, no joke, not even recording, but just having conversation similar to what we're doing for like 3.5 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And he got like 5 episodes out of it. And he told me, he was like, man, you really should do this, man. You seem to have a knack for it. So I started My Take Radio in 2006, just covering MMA and wrestling and video games and movies. And what ended up happening was I kept doing shows every week, but there was no set schedule. There was no half hour or 1 hour. It was just like, I'm going to talk until I'm tired of talking, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
No concept of editing, no understanding of nothing, just uploading podcasts and hoping for the best. So I did that for about a year or two, and I got burned out fierce.
That's a hard pace to keep up, man.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It was like I was dating my wife at the time, and I was just trying to get a foothold on, raising my 2 sisters, managing my home, dating, and I'm like, I don't got time for this. So I shelved it a little bit, and then I kind of started circling back to podcasting in 2009, which at that point, obviously, the medium had come forward where people were doing live podcasts, et cetera, et cetera. So I said, you know what? Maybe I need to do it live and actually interact with people to give me the energy to do it. So I started doing it live in a call-in format, still My Take Radio, still covering everything, but I was doing it for 3 hours at a clip, covering all four topics still, MMA, gaming, wrestling, and entertainment, and I was doing it 3 hours at a clip from 11 p.m. Till 2 a.m., and it was all right, man. I think I did about, I want to say 150 episodes. Then a gentleman by the name of Andrew Zarian, he runs the GFQ network. He said to me, he was like, man, you really should start doing video. And I'm like, I'm not comfortable being in front of the camera, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, dude, you talk for 3 hours. I'm sure you'll be fine in front of the camera. So I think for our 200th episode, we unleashed a video, And since then, we've been doing audio and video all the way up. We just did our 300, I believe, in 62nd episode or 63rd. And, My Take Radio as a brand evolved to where the My Take Radio site was more than just the site for the podcast. We started covering all the stuff we did on air on the site. And I realized, I'm like, this is too big to just be housed by My Take Radio. So in 2014, I said, I need to create something, an entity to house all this mayhem. Mm-hmm. And from it came RageWorks, which oddly enough is an acronym for rants and reviews about gaming, entertainment, and the works. So that's exactly how it is. Plus, everybody always says that I'm mostly angry a lot of the time, so it kind of worked. Like, they were always like, Rich is always raging or whatever, and it just worked. So I used that, and RageWorks.
That's awesome, dude. Nice.
Yeah, it became a brand, and we ran with it. And then, My Take Radio just became like the flagship show for RageWorks. Then we started bringing in other shows, other people, and here we are now, 2016 with 4 shows, with MTR, of course, being part of that, plus, all the content and stuff that we've done, all while working a full-time job, raising both of my sisters that are handicapped, and trying to be a good husband. So if I can do it, anybody can do it.
Mm-hmm. And you're doing a fabulous job in every aspect, dude.
Appreciate it, brother. Appreciate it.
But respect. So, yeah, myself, I'm a husband, a father. I work, full-time job. Have talkingaboutgames.com, the Anything Podcast, the Postgame Report, and then my YouTube channel.
Right.
And so people listening that aren't in the know of the whole process of podcasting or creating content on the internet, they might be wondering, why the hell do we do this if it's not our full-time job? And it's because we love it. I know that's why I do it.
Right.
I have a feeling that's why you do it, because there's no other explanation as to why we would take so much time out of our day, our busy lives, to podcast for 3 hours like you would. Or for me, when I total everything, it's about 3 hours as well. And then editing, people don't take that into account. And then posting it. And dealing with a staff. Exactly. Promoting it is almost an entire week process.
Absolutely. And preparation, that's the thing. Like, for me, when My Take Radio was going into a live format, I said, this 3-hour shit I can't do, just because, I needed to sleep. It took an extra 2 hours to edit. So let's say I finished the show at 2 a.m. and I started editing 2:15, 2:20. My head wouldn't hit the pillow till 4:30.
Wow,
in the morning.
Dude.
And then I'd wake up, 10 or 11 o'clock to go to the office and wash, rinse, and repeat. So what ended up happening was I split the live show into 2 shows, one Wednesdays doing MMA and wrestling, and then Thursdays doing gaming and entertainment, and I've been running it this way ever since. Same thing, 11 o'clock, now 11:30 start time, and now I'm just doing maybe 90 minutes, 90 minutes to an hour to 90 minutes, depending on what it is. Sometimes we venture into the 2-hour stuff, but that's dependent on whether it was a busy week in MMA or wrestling, or if, E3, or if we got guests or callers, whatever the case may be. But I try to stick to 90 minutes. I actually set a timer when I start broadcasting just to try and keep honest.
Mm-hmm. And here's something else that people don't take into account. Not only do we prepare for the show, well, for me, preparing is, as I did with Rich today, at about 6-something, I'm like, can you record today? And that's my preparation. Didn't have questions lined up for Rich or anything like that. But that's me doing this for 10 years and being comfortable enough to where I can have everything in my head already. But people don't take into account that when you have a website, you need to have content for that website. So you need to make sure that the staff that is working with you is on point. Not only that, but if you have reviewers, you need to make sure you have enough PR contacts so that they can send you products for review. And when you do that, there's sometimes a deadline when you have to review these things. Then you have to watch out for NDAs, not breaking those, because that could ruin a relationship. So there's more than meets the eye when it comes to owning a website, owning a podcast, a YouTube channel, that fortunately for the listeners, they don't have to worry about. All they do is get the final product. Hopefully it's good, and they come back.
Right.
But, we're not talking about this because we want people to thank us, which is, as some people would say, shooting the shit. And for those up-and-coming people, content creators who are thinking about doing this is just an idea of what's to come. Because nobody told us this. We had to learn it all for ourselves. And Rich has been doing this just about as long as I have. And we've seen plenty of shows come and go. And for those of us that have stuck around, we're a unique set of individuals, because part of it is being hard-headed, part of it is being persistent and confident in our abilities, and overall, it's the love of the game, no pun intended. So, doing this since 2006, what was the biggest challenge?
I think the biggest challenge was trying to pace yourself, and this is a cliched, just not blowing it all on the first show, pacing, discipline, creating an established schedule, knowing your limits, figuring out obviously the ins and outs. But the biggest challenge, I think, for me was getting past speaking into a void and hoping someone listens. Because that's what it is. Too many people, and you know this as well as I do, they record podcasts, they expect 100 downloads in the first week, or 250 or 300 or 1,000. It's like, listen, it's not a run, it's a slow walk. And that's how it goes. It's like you do a show. You make sure that you have established consistency both in airing, recording, and editing. If you record the show on a Monday, then you should let your audience know that by Tuesday night or Wednesday they should have it. Like, these are the things, and especially if you're not doing evergreen content, if you're doing stuff related to news or things that happened during that week, that's the toughest thing, man, because life gets in the way.
Absolutely. And then by the time you actually have the time to report on it, there's already 40 to 50 other people who have reported the same thing.
That's right.
So one of the toughest things is this, and you brought up a great point, is that thought of, how do I stay relevant? Just if I only have 100 downloads this episode, does that mean people don't want to listen to me anymore?
Right.
Because we've all been there where we'll get 1,000 downloads one episode. The next episode, we get 100 downloads. And we're like, what the hell happened? What did I do? And then sometimes you fight with yourself because you want to reach out to the audience and get feedback, but then you fall into the trap of trying to please everyone.
That's right.
And there comes a time where you just have to say, you know what? It all goes with that consistency you just talked about. You have to stick by your guns. And I know a lot of people say this because when I first started, like my second year of podcasting is when it began to really it started to flow into the mainstream. So people began to ask a lot of questions. And they're like, what should I do? How should I begin my show? Blah, blah, blah. And a lot of us would say, be yourself. Don't lie to the audience. People are going to see right through you, blah, blah, blah. By the way, on a side note, I have to stop saying blah, blah, blah. Okay, so now, without getting into my drama, because there's always internet drama, I began to distance myself from other people that I was friends with. Some of them I was podcasting before, some were podcasting a little before me. At one point, we were a tight group. But when I saw the double standards and what I thought was hypocrisy, when I questioned it, I became a villain. So the topic of being yourself was the whole reasoning for this conflict, because we had on my site, talkingaboutgames.com, now I own it with 3 other guys. So we put up an article, and the article was about the Xbox One. Talkingaboutgames.com is a big video game website. Well, not to everyone, but to me it is. Anyway, so we put up a brand new contributing editor. His first post, his very first post was about the Xbox One and why it was a waste. At the moment. He put, at the moment, the Xbox One is a waste, or something like that.
Yep, and I disagree with that immediately. So,
yeah, and if you read it, he talks about how and this particular, the whole reasoning I agreed with, because at first I was like, whoa, really? But what he was basically saying was that everything that was shown, meaning Connect support, some other features, were totally scratched, and Connect was no longer a thing for the Xbox One, so people wasted their money buying that, getting, the day one edition like myself. And basically everything that was shown at the reveal no longer existed. That the Xbox One, at that particular moment, that was at the reveal, was a waste. It was wasted. Now we have a new, reformatted Xbox One, whatever. And he owns one, by the way. So he had just bought one. He was basing it on his experience. And overall, he said, he likes some of the games that he has on the Xbox One, and he knows it's going to improve. But at the moment, he felt it was a waste. Kind of like my video where I put, don't buy an Xbox One at the moment. And that was when there was a real bad dry spell.
Right.
But now, because there was a major beef with one of the guys from talkingaboutgames.com, goes by the name of Soldier.
Yep, I know him.
So, Soldier's a ball buster, but he's a great guy. He's in the military, and now he's training to become a police officer in Texas. So, he had some beef with some people. And when, things kind of quieted down, unfortunately, I had to be in the middle, be the peacemaker. When the new editor wanted to post this article, his account wasn't set up yet, so Soldier was like, all right, I'll just post it up. So, unfortunately, it showed him as the editor. And that gave, people came out of the woodworks, dude, to bash Soldier for this article and bash the site. And people were like, well, I'm not surprised. Look who wrote it. And, this is nothing but a flame bait article. That's what you guys are doing now. Like, this house, basically saying this how low we stoop and blah, blah, blah. And, people are tweeting at me while I'm at work. And, a few hours go by and I have 100 plus tweets about this. And one dude was like, I bet if this was about the PlayStation 4, you wouldn't let this happen. And I was, I'm laughing that's pretty funny. I didn't think anything of it.
Of course not.
So number one, I was like, you know what? No, if it was about the PS4, I would put it, because I'm not going to restrict what our writers are willing to write. There's nobody being insulted. He's not even insulting the company itself. So why wouldn't I let it go? So then this dude goes, well, seems like you don't want to take my advice. Oh, well, good luck with your site. Now, this is somebody I knew for years, right? And people started seeing that. At first, I kind of, squinted my eye huh? But then,
of course,
people started going, yo, what the hell was that all about? Blah, blah, blah. And I guess they would call it shade at this time, in this point in time.
Right.
But the more I thought about it, the more I was like, you know what? I think people are, even my wife was like, yo, what the hell was that all about? And why wouldn't he like DM you instead of just throwing it out there for other people to see? And so that was like another opening for more people to come. Like, yeah, that article poorly written. And, I guess that's what you guys are willing to put up now for a few hits and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, wow, these are people that I know, So,
of course.
So I was like, all right. So my last thing was, I said, you guys have always stated, all of us, that you should be yourself. The moment we are ourselves, all of a sudden it's a problem.
Right.
And it was multiple times people were like, oh, you guys should calm down. You gotta. I'm like, why? Why? This is who we are. This is what makes us unique. 100%. And how we feel comfortable podcasting. If you don't like it,
don't listen.
Don't listen. Exactly.
All
and
right.
It's not listeners. It was people that podcasted in our little circle.
Right.
And I would look at them like, wait a minute, what happened to this whole rule of thumb? Number one, be yourself. Now all of a sudden, being yourself has some stipulations.
Yep.
If it's something that you don't like, you can't be yourself. Unless it's something we like. We want you to say or do. And then, basically I was like, you know what? I'm done. And I took my little break. And sometimes a little break is good because it gives you time to unwind and kind of reevaluate what you want to do for yourself.
I agree.
And, basically the Postgame Report, which is my video game-based podcast, we're no longer the type of podcast that wants to go to E3 and do coverage or go to these big events or get big review copies of games. We don't want to do that no more because it just, because of what happened on Twitter, with the double standards, the hypocrisy, I lost, when it came to the business side of video games, I lost all motivation to continue.
Of course.
But the love of podcasting, that's what keeps me going back. It's not, I'm sure you think the same way. You don't think your word is the end all be all. But we enjoy doing what we do.
Well, this is how I see it. I mean, my podcast is called My Take Radio for a reason, because it's my take on X.
Yep.
And I always tell people, I'm not a journalist. I am an opinionated, I'm a pundit. I'm a talking head. I'm any of that stuff that, circles the planet of journalism, but isn't journalism. And don't get me wrong, it's always cool if you want to try and break a story first or be the first person to do that, because we all want to be the first at something. But at the end of the day, you got to ask yourself, both as a podcaster and a content creator, it's when your head hits the pillow and your eyes go to, and you close your eyes, you gotta say to yourself, did I give the realest, best version of what I want people to hear as possible? If you can't close your eyes at night with a clear conscience and say, that felt great or that was good, then you shouldn't be doing it. For me, my show is one part opinion based, one part entertainment, one part therapy.
Yeah, very therapeutic. That's what the Anything podcast is all about.
Yeah, I've shared stories from my, from the real world. Like, I'll be like, listen, I want to share some real stuff with you. And I'll do that usually in the opener of the show, like share some stuff about my week or whatever. Because at the end of the day, if people can't connect with your message because they feel the same way, then that's not your audience. And that's what people always ask. It's like, what is your muse? Who is this for? And you guys, from every show that I've heard that you guys do a show for the everyman in the most realistic conversational sense, in the most realistic and most conversational way as possible. There's
we try.
There's no fancy drops. There are obviously because you want to add some stuff, but at the end of the day, people that listen come for the conversation and stay for the honesty.
Yeah. And there's been plenty of times, dude, where I've thought of just cutting off PGR and ending it And every time I think like that, I get a message like, dude, where's PGR? I need my fix. Right. And we got a very encouraging review the other day where the gentleman was around when Talking About Games.com was flourishing. And he said, I stuck with you guys because of the realism that you guys bring. You bring everyday life into a hobby that other shows don't do for whatever reason.
Yep, I talk about the news and I give it my own spin on it. And at the end of the day, you enjoy it or you don't. But the thing you should never lose sight of is exactly that. If you can't be the realest you in front of a microphone, then what good is it being in front of a microphone?
Yeah, I totally agree. And, I purposely changed my Twitter. I mentioned this on this show. I changed my Twitter.
Yep.
I got rid of the JVB Twitter. I wanted to start fresh.
Yep.
And it was also a way of seeing, okay, who enjoys my content enough to come back and listen, even though I'm not linking it from my JVB account.
Right.
And it's, and I'm not going to lie, it feels great going to an event and having somebody recognize you and be like, yo, dude, I've been listening to your stuff for a while. I've had, in the past, I've had people, they've heard me laugh at a launch, at one time at a GameStop with SFX 360, we were doing a little launch event, interviewing people on the line for Gears of War 3. And Gears of War 2, excuse me. And so I was laughing, and some dude goes, yo, dude, are you JVB? And I'm like, yes. And he goes, dude, I listened to you on Podtacular. And at the time, I wasn't with Podtacular anymore, So he was like, you and Fumo Jive are amazing. And I'm like, holy shit, that's kind of crazy and scary at the same time because, I didn't know how to, at first, I didn't know how to handle it. I was like, any of my friends messing with me, But,
right.
I just treated him like, yo, man, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening. And, I had him on an interview and didn't treat him any different than how I would treat you if we were hanging out. So, those moments, they're far and few in between, but they feel great. And at times that's enough to be like, all right, if I've managed to have a total stranger recognize my freaking laugh, then obviously I did something right. So let me just keep doing what I'm doing. And of course, getting feedback on Twitter when you least expect it. Those are the moments you sort of wait for. I don't wait for them, but I don't wait for them. But when they happen, it's like, crap, I can't just give up PGR. I can't just drop it because there are people, whether it's 3 people or 300 people or 3,000, still somebody out there waiting to listen to you.
I tell people this all the time. And last year, I believe we, myself and Danny from Royal Flush Magazine, we went to Pace University and we spoke to students that were interested in doing this kind of stuff.
Oh, that's cool, man.
Yeah, and during that conversation, I said to them, I'm like, listen, if you are always worried about the numbers, just remember that a room full of 50 people is still 50 people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's more people that you speak to on air with 50 people than you may speak to in a given week.
That is absolutely true.
Because think about it. You fill up a room with 50 people, it's going to look packed. Mm-hmm. Depending, obviously, on the size of the room. You fill up a room with 100 people, it's going to look packed. And that's what I always tell people. I had my nephew and another kid were doing a wrestling podcast at one point, and they'd be like, man, we only got 15 downloads this month or whatever. I'd be like, and that's 15 people that you've never spoken to ever.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, you got to ask yourself, if you can't turn on the microphone and do what you got to do and move past the numbers for the sake of the brand and the creativity and the outlet, then you shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
You know, we've been we've been doing this respectively for this amount of time, and we've looked at it from the perspective of this is great. We love doing it, and don't get me wrong. I tell people all the time, I don't close my eyes, not saying to myself that I want to make money doing this, that I want this to be my job. You know, anybody that says, you shouldn't think about the money and do it for the love. I tell people you're full of shit.
Yep.
You don't stop lying to yourself. Stop doing it to sell whatever product you're selling or course or podcast or whatever, and accept it for what it is. Everybody does this because they enjoy it, but at the end of the day, the goal is either emotional payment in the sense of I feel great doing this, or emotional and financial where I'm getting paid to do what I love.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't love it, the end game is don't do it. Period.
Yeah. And podcasting as a whole, there's so many podcasts now. It's hard to imagine that back when we started, that it would be this huge. And,
that's right.
And not only huge, but would be a way for people to make money. Now, not the average person. I've seen people like Stone Cold and, like Joe Rogan. They make money doing their podcast. And
that's right.
They've had an established audience beforehand. So that certainly helps. But the fact is, people want to listen to those individuals talk. And you want to set goals when you begin this, but you also you got to want to do this. And I'm paraphrasing here. I saw at work, somebody had posted something on one of the shops at work. And it basically said that a true professional will do their best the moment they don't feel like they gave their best. Something like that. Like a real professional will do it, will be professional no matter what. Whether they're tired or full of energy, they're going to remain consistent.
That's right.
And for myself, even on my Twitter profile, which is at Jose V Beta, and Rich, you are?
At RageWorks. _works. Because a lady is sitting on RageWorks and hasn't wanted to get it up.
Wow.
Hasn't logged into Twitter since like 2008.
Damn, holding on to that for dear life, waiting for you to pay up.
Yes, sir.
But on my profile, I put down that I'm a professional podcaster, and I feel that way because I started this when podcasting was still an uncertainty. It was like, how long will this thing last? How far will this go? How do you do this? How do you do that? Using $15 Radio Shack headphones with a little microphone attached to it. I consider myself an expert because I've seen, just like Rich, I've seen how far it's come. I've done basically everything there is to do within a technical standpoint with podcasting. And I sort of laugh when I see people, for example, I had this dude who actually makes money podcasting, being like a podcast advisor. And somehow he and I were talking via email, and I listened to a few of his episodes, and basically he's selling himself. He's selling his services. Nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But everything he's talking about, I already know. I already been there, done that. Bought the T-shirt and the Blu-ray special edition.
That's right.
So he and I were chit-chatting, and then I asked him a simple question. I think I asked him what mic was he using or whatever. He tells me that if I want audio advice, that he charges me blah, blah, blah per session. I was like, all right, dude, I appreciate it, brother. You have a good one, So I was like, wow.
You know what
really
it is?
selling himself hard, man.
No, you know what it is, and I'll tell you. And this is comic related. When The Dark Knight came out, the Joker said one of the most powerful lines, and if you're good at something, you never do it for free.
Yeah,
and I'm a firm believer in that. But you also have to know when and where to not do that particular thing for free.
Absolutely.
And that is where people forget. You know, I've had guys that they'll be like, hey, man, like I had a guy, he ran a show, you know, he shall remain nameless, but he was just like, how do you do this? How do you do X? If I wanted to do this, what do I do with this? And you know what it is? I don't mind answering a question here, answering a question there. Like, if you ask me once every 6 months about something, not terrible. If every month there's a minimum of 3 questions, I'm gonna be a bit of an asshole. And I say this because you're devaluing the information and the man hours it took to acquire that. And that's what sometimes people don't understand when it comes to money and people trying to make podcasts and trying to make a profit. They're like, well, all you got to do is turn on the mic and blah, blah, blah. It's like, yes, but you're paying for better equipment, better services. Hell, you want more shows. I'd like to make a salary so I could give you guys more shows. You know what I mean? Like, nobody understands the cause and effect of this stuff. This goes to what that guy did. What he did with you was not the right way to do it, especially because you're a veteran in this game, and it's a conversation, not a sales pitch.
Exactly. I was
if
like,
he would have been
buddy,
like,
you know,
if he would have just been like, listen, JVB, I use this mic. By the way, you know, if you're ever interested in wanting to do X and X, I got this really good program that helps. I charge for it, but you know, I'll charge you X. And it's one of those things that, you know, I'm a big fan of Gary Vaynerchuk, and he wrote a book which was Jab, 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 Right Hook, which was giving out a lot of information as much as possible, little jabs, little jabs, little jabs, little jabs, and then the right hook, which in that case would be the ask. If this guy willingly divulged that information to you or gave you some tips or gave you some tweaks and the stuff worked and it helped you, and he came down the road and said, you know, JVB, if you're interested in doing a webinar, I'll pay you X. Or if you want to participate in this webinar, you pay me X. You would have probably been more receptive because the guy's providing value.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. People take the if you're not good at something, don't do it for free mantra to a lot of extremes, sometimes to the point of alienating themselves. I mean, I get a lot of crap for that too. Like, I'll go to a show or I'll go to an event and I'm there maybe an hour and a half, grab my photos, grab my videos. Oh, you're leaving already? And I'm like, yeah, I'm here to work, not to get free hors d'oeuvres. You know? Or yeah, well, it's been a long time no see, because a person who's on the grind, you're not seeing.
That's true.
You know, especially if you're not making money.
Absolutely. We have to compartmentalize our time. Okay.
100%.
Like I allocate a certain amount of time for this. I allocate a certain amount of time for this. So there are a lot of people that we know who, honestly, I don't know how some of them work or if they work, but I know there are some who go to work and then do this or go to events or have the luxury of going to events during work hours. I don't know how the hell they do it, but more power to them. But after years of seeing that basically they're stagnant, they're still at that same position or that same status quo, even though they have this luxury of attending all these events. Because you and I, we've been talking about going to this photo event, and I have to work that weekend, you know, and it's a pain in the butt to try to get somebody to switch. And it's not like you and I can just get up and go to these big events that happen in New York City all the time, whether it's electronics or photography or video games.
100%.
And if I had the time to go to all these events, unfortunately, I don't. But if I had the resources, I would definitely be a lot further than I am now. But because I grew up, you and I grew up learning to work with what we have.
That's it.
I might not have all the resources, all the review material, or the early access to certain things like I used to, but that doesn't make me what I am. Never did, never will. Just gotta
100%.
You have to let yourself. Oh wow! You have to let you be the main attraction. Because at the end of the day, that is who people are going to come back to listen to. So, this is an unusually long episode of the Anything Podcast, so I want to ask you one more thing.
Of course.
About electronics. And in this case, the biggest news in electronics is about the Note 7. You have one, I have one. There's a big recall by Samsung. It's a voluntary recall, so you don't have to send your phone back, but if you want to, they're going to, free of charge, do an exchange when inventory calls for it.
That's right.
So, you and I talked briefly about this. Are you going to return your phone?
I am probably going to do it for the sake of my own conscience. And the reason I say this is because you're in a woulda, coulda, shoulda scenario. It's like if you would take the gamble, if you want to keep the gamble, let me rephrase that. If you want to take the gamble and keep the phone, and God forbid something happens, you're like, shit, I should have done it. I should have done it. Mm-hmm. Versus the inconvenience of having to give your phone in, get another phone, add all your stuff back in, transfer all your crap, X, Y, and Z. You really have to consciously ask yourself, how much do I want to be inconvenienced?
Mm-hmm.
And that's really it. Because it's like if the phone explodes in your house and your house catches on fire,
that's a big inconvenience.
That's a big inconvenience versus taking an afternoon or a day, swapping it out, putting all your stuff on the new phone, and being, especially now that Samsung has that built-in transfer software. Mm-hmm. You know, you might spend maybe half hour in T-Mobile or AT&T or your carrier of choice, transferring everything over, and you can at least feel better knowing that whatever it was resolved versus now where it's a lot of uncertainty. I personally am going to wait the 2 or 3 weeks that they said it would take for carriers to get replacements, and I'm just going to walk in and do it because now it's like if my phone gets a little warm, I start kind of looking at it sideways like maybe I shouldn't be doing this.
A friend of mine asked me because he had gotten his at launch, and he was like, "Hey, my phone runs a little hot. It's yours." And when I finally got mine, I said, "Yeah, actually, while charging it, it does feel a little hot." Because of course I was using it. You know how it is when you first get a brand new phone. You're customizing it. You're downloading apps. You're like tweaking everything, and it takes a few weeks to really settle down and let the phone be a phone.
100%.
So I was like, maybe that has something to do with it. Since then, I haven't really dealt with a hot phone because, as I stated, that whole phase is starting to dwindle. But the reason why I'm asking is, I guess I'm asking you for another point of view because I'm still in between. Like, if it's really not hot, then maybe I shouldn't. But
I would do it just because.
Yeah.
You got to think of it this way. They say it's, let's say, 1% of handsets. 100,000 phones, 1% is still a lot.
Yeah. They said about 35 so far out of 2 million phones.
Yep.
But they're not going to take any chances. And, of course, that's the best route to go because, God forbid, they come up with some excuse. They say, well, it's only 35 phones out of 2 million. Then, and from what my understanding, exactly, and somebody could die, and then forget it. That Samsung will lose even more money than they would right now, and it's kind of crazy because the 7 is going to be announced next week.
That's right,
and I'm sure a lot of people will probably really, myself included, thinking, maybe I should go back to Apple. But that's a whole nother topic.
Well, I'll say this just not to cut you off, but I'll say this: when iPhones come out, there's always some weird shit.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. The bending. Remember the bending?
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like
bending, the antenna.
Yep. As a nerd,
Tesla.
As a techie, we have these are things. This is what we pay for. This is the early adopter headaches we have.
They're not uncommon. The red rings of death for the Xbox 360.
It happens, man, and people just need to understand. It's like, if you don't want to deal with any of that, don't be the first kid in the sandbox. Simple as that. Don't be the first one in the pool. Dip your toes in a little bit. See if it's warm. Don't Don't dive in head first. I knew. I jumped in. I said, all right, this is good.
Mm-hmm.
Did I notice my phone get a little warm on a couple of different occasions? Yes. When the whole thing about the phone exploding came out, I was like, all right, this. It's like, knowing my luck, I'll be one of those people, and that's what I'm saying. Like, if it's free of charge, it's just the only thing you got to sacrifice, which is just as expensive, is time. Just go into your carrier, swap it out, transfer everything over, and go to bed with not worrying about your phone exploding.
Mm-hmm.
What they need to do is create some first-party accessories that you can buy that are USB-C, so we don't have to buy,
You're telling me about your car charger and everything like that.
Chang's cables, the Choitech. Like, I bought a USB-C cable from this company called Choitech on Amazon, and everyone's like, yeah, I got it for my Note 7. And I'm like, I don't even want to touch it.
Because, as someone who works on elevators, and we have solid state controllers, and every controller has multiple safety features that will prevent unwanted power surges from destroying the entire controller. So a transformer you will get a burnt transformer, but the transformer is basically saving the rest of the components.
Right.
So based on what I was reading and watching, the stock charger kit that comes with your phone has several, even the cable itself has several safety features, safety precautions that, resistors, capacitors, that will help prevent an unwanted power surge or even having constant power flowing into your phone after it's already fully charged. So they recommend use what Samsung provided for you, because the safety regulations are there. Even on the charger, in the charger port itself, it has devices, components that will basically kill itself before it allows extra current to flow into your device and killing your entire motherboard and battery, of course. So stick with the stock cables, with the stock power charge. There's wattage that is written, wattage and amperage. I mean, there's all kinds of technical information. Just make sure you read it, and make sure if you do buy a third-party charger that it's the same it has the same specifications.
100%.
So, sometimes the cheaper brands aren't always best. And in this case, on the Note 7, you have a freaking powerful device that requires a lot of power. But that's
$900 phone, You got
man.
You got a phone that's almost $1,000, and that's
I know,
that people don't think about. You got a phone that's almost $1,000 that you're willing to sacrifice because you're getting a cable that's $3, and it's like, I read the reviews, I check around, I read a couple different things, a couple different communities before I pull the trigger, and you got to be aware of that, especially because this USB-C spec is such a new spec for this device that you gotta wait a little bit. You got to do your homework, carry your charger with you, carry your cable with you.
That's what I do.
Until you can figure it out.
I carry my stock charger and cable with me to work.
There you go.
If I need to charge it, I'll charge it a little bit here and there. Another thing is, for those that don't know, do not go to work and plug in your phone and just leave it like that the entire day. You're going to destroy, or you're going to weaken the battery cycle. Let it run out on its own. And when you're ready to charge it, if you got to charge it for a few minutes here and there, that's cool. But don't leave it the entire day. I know some people like to do that. With phones specifically, because this phone, you cannot take the battery out. If you had a battery that's replaceable, then leave it in there. But because this one, once it goes, you really need to be careful and follow the basic rules of charging batteries. And the biggest rule is, for something that doesn't have a replaceable battery, is not to leave it all the time. So even the little wireless, what they call that, little
QI
circular
QI charger. I actually use one of those from Tilt. I used it on my Note 4. I use it on the Note 7. And the thing is, it's not a fast charger, so it's slow.
Yeah.
So I put it on at night, and I leave it on overnight, obviously, until I wake up in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
But that's one of those things where if you're leaving it on something like that where it's a slow charge, then, you have some leeway. But if you're plugging it in your OEM fast charge adapter and you're leaving it plugged in the whole day, you're definitely going to mess with some stuff.
Yes, because that's not a common method of charging batteries. That's something you want to charge your battery in an hour and be ready to go for the rest of the day, but not to leave the entire day.
Nope.
But I mean, it's great to have a conversation about electronics and podcasting with someone other than myself.
There you go.
But yeah, Rich, I truly appreciate you hopping on. And before you leave, please let everyone know where they can find all of your work.
All right. First and foremost, you can find everything we do on RageWorksnet. Everything we do there covering gaming, entertainment, mixed martial arts, pro wrestling. The works encompasses comics, collectibles, things of that nature. That's where you will find everything else. If you're more of a social media butterfly and not somebody that likes to read, you can find us on Twitter at @Rage_Works. You can also find us on Facebook. Same thing, just look for official RageWorks on Facebook. Instagram and Snapchat, we are RageWorks on those platforms. No spaces, just RageWorks on there. Always good to interact and chop it up with people. I'm pretty open with that stuff, so by all means, feel free to reach out. Let me know if you checked out the Anything Podcast or Tag or know JVB, and you'll get a warm hello from yours truly.
Awesome, and I look forward to continuing our working relationship, and of course, we're friends outside of this as well.
That's right.
So, that certainly helps. It's in this particular industry, podcasting, YouTube, having real friends is a really, really big deal, because especially when you're working together, because you don't have to worry about trust issues.
That's right.
Believe me, there's a lot of shady people that, like in any industry,
that's right,
will do what they can to use people and then move forward and leave those who help them behind. And hey, that happens in any industry, not just our industry.
Hell no.
So you just got to, just like everything else in life, you just got to be careful and stick with those that you know and trust, and everything will work out. That's going to wrap up another episode of the Anything Podcast. I truly appreciate everyone who has been supporting the Anything Podcast. I'm thinking of actually changing things around with my other podcast, maybe combining both into segments or something. I don't know. I'm always thinking about different things. One of these days, I'll actually implement something that I think about. But until then, I'm Jose Betancourt. Talk to you next week.